Sentinel Strength. I'm your host, Nick Umble. Today's show, we have James Mclanahan. Hey, dude, it's been a while. It's been years since we have seen each other. We talk on a regular basis, though. James and I were in 4th Battalion, Charlie Company 4th Battalion, 1st Special Forces Group together. James is a former 275 Ranger. For those of you that don't know, that is 2nd Battalion of the 75th Ranger Regiment. He currently resides in Orange County, California, and runs his company called Primal Solutions. James, how you been, man? How are things going in sunny California?
Good, man. Good. Staying busy. Really glad we're out of the rain and what was the early fire season in a rough kind of a a rough start for Los Angeles.
Southern California, dude.
Yeah, man. But no, like really good. Staying busy, trying to pare down some stuff that's maybe not exactly what I want to do and get more into just like stuff that motivates me, stuff that keeps me going, keeps me pumped up. So I've been doing stuff with the SFA, doing stuff with Johan. I got a couple of Ranger buddies that are out here doing good stuff. And so really just trying to rebuild like the network and the team to go do stuff now that I'm out. Because for me, dude, and like we've talked about this, but I really hated everything when I got out, like everything. And I was like, okay, I got to take all of this, energy and this change and figure it out, because I had such a good group of people around me that I really liked and like really got along with. And, then I lost basically all of that. And that was, for me, that was like really like, I knew that was happening. I knew it was coming. We talked about it before when you met me, because I had done the same thing when I left Ranger Battalion, and you're like, oh, you failed to adapt to real life. But I was like, all right, well, I'm doing it this time. We're going to rock out. And, dude, it's actually been great. Like, this has been one of the best choices we ever made. My wife and I, like, but we came down here with no jobs. And it's like, we were living in the Seattle area. It's expensive. It's more expensive here. And so, dude, we came down here. Within like a week, Mel had a job. Within like 2, I finally had a job. My Ranger buddy, was a CTO of a software company. He had got out like 8 years before me, and he had just come back from a board meeting and like, you guys need to hire a new position. You're going to do this. I want you to go do sales in this. I got super lucky because I was looking for a sales job. But from there, man, yeah, it's just been rocking out, doing stuff with the SFA, working with my company and trying to stand up what I feel like was an opportunity to gain some traction in the training, like civilian training sector, because they don't train the way we trained. Obviously, it's a completely different mission set, but I feel like, the stuff we did with Thor, integrating the performance psychologist and having stuff that where like, if your fitness is bad, you're going to get punished, right? Like 100% fitness matters on the battlefield. And even though, the types of engagements that like police or a civilian who has a home defense thing would end up in are like very different, that all that stuff still matters.
I want to dig into that comment you just made. So you said when they get into like some of the situation, and I'm assuming right now you're talking about law enforcement.
Yeah.
I would beg the question that law enforcement gets into some of the same predicaments that we do, or that we did when we were overseas and would go through a house using CQB.
Yes.
And my assumption is that those guys are not trained at any level that we were trained at. And that is due to numerous things. I would assume that funding is one. I would assume that a lot of those guys are street cops. And so you have your day job, right? So
For sure.
That's two, right? Where as a dude, especially a guy now I can't say that necessarily for like LA SWAT. I'm assuming LA SWAT trains just as much as a CRIF or just as much as a tier 1 unit. I would assume. I don't know that for a fact, but I would assume that there's some of that going on.
Absolutely.
But my biggest complaint there is that target discrimination in the real world is target discrimination in the military world. It's the same.
Absolutely.
A guy with a gun is a guy with a gun is a guy with a gun.
Absolutely.
So when I see some of the tactics or hear or watch some of the tactics that the local sheriff SWAT team or the local PD SWAT team, and I obviously do not live anywhere close to like LA County, which has a dedicated SWAT crew. Is it training and target discrimination, or is it fear? Because is it a different mentality? Like knowing when we were in the Army, regardless of what unit we were in, especially you being in two different soft units, I guess going into a house was a thing, but it wasn't like nerve wracking. Does it get more nerve wracking for a cop because they do not do it as much as we do it? And so the adrenaline is not controlled. I guess that's a better description.
Yeah.
Is their adrenaline not as controlled as our adrenaline was because we did it so much, it became muscle memory and they're not doing it as much? I don't know that to be true, but what's been your experience with that?
Yeah, so I think that's definitely a component. And so this is it becomes a way bigger, way bigger, I think, problem when you start to look at it, because it's multifaceted. So if we break it down, like what you're talking about is the training to where exhausted, tired, stressed out, right? Like you're redlining your heart. So, your brain is basically not functioning the same way, right? You're in a full fight or flight response. That you need to have trained that stuff so well that it doesn't matter, that you can do it on autopilot. And so, yeah, so for those SWAT guys, it's like that. I would say for like a lot of the guys who, like you said, have a day job, there's also fatigue, right? Because they're working super long hours. You don't know what their last shift was like. Those guys don't get trained to that level of specificity because there's all these other problems that they have to deal with that their bosses are more concerned with. They're like, you're going to get fired way before you're going to get in a shootout or die in a shootout from, having a bad interaction at a traffic stop and somebody makes a complaint, or, you go in to deal with a shoplifter and you put hands on them and somebody doesn't think you should put hands on them. So like the training priorities are different. And I think that there's a ton more put on the individual. So whereas for us, especially like at Ranger Battalion, it's iron fisted. Everyone will do it this way, with a little bit of leeway. But I mean, compared to what like you have for them, so their fitness regimen is basically on them. Their training regimen is basically on them. The time management is 100%. It's on them, and time is probably one of the hardest things for them to deal with.
That's
like
the commodity. That's the straw that breaks the camel's back, is the amount of time that they don't have.
Right. So if we take those things aside, right, like their lifestyle is not necessarily like our lifestyle was, where it's a bunch of like-minded guys who worked really, really hard in a really competitive environment to get there. It's a ton of people that really their motivation and their day-to-day, once they leave work, all totally different. And so I think that homogeneity of mindset isn't really there the same way. And I think that like their day-to-day probably looks more like one of our Afghan commandos or one of our, host nation counterparts looks like, where they're like, dude, I'm trying to survive day to day. Like you guys come out here and do a deployment and go home. And even though during like the peaks of the war, like we were going a lot, those guys are just trying to go through the day to day. And so to me, if there's a couple of tools that we're missing, and to me, the target discrimination is the biggest one, right? Because like if you go to your average range, the way the range is set up is every guy is a bad guy. And there's a ton of rangeisms that are built in. And these are such big, old institutions that they don't change fast like we change fast. And so even though some of them are integrating technology, they're integrating force on force, I would say take it all the way back to the flat range and take it all the way back to basics. That some of the stuff that we've integrated is still not there. And so I try to put that there. And like I'll oversimplify this example on the rangism stuff. Where is downrange in a gunfight? It's 360. So, and Tony Bell would always be like, yeah, we're not going to point anything downrange when we're at the range, right? He'd be like, just point in safe direction. And trying to get out of that range mindset, even when you're at the range. So that, safe is between the left and right limit. And what your backstop is because it's a berm, but you shouldn't train that way. And so even on the range, I'll set up where I'll have a backstop that's like a piece of steel around the targets. And so if you're not paying attention and you shoot the steel, if you're a Jiffy Lube, that's a kid. Just to try to put more of that kind of stuff into every bit of training, because I think that that's a component that's largely left out, and it slows training down. It can be a training distractor, right? So you have to be careful about who you're training and what level they're at and what they're doing. But once you have a baseline, I think that has to be there all the time.
Does that also, those guys probably don't do any housework either.
They do very limited. So the stuff I've done with police officers, it's very, very, very limited, and it kind of shows. And then a lot of the I would say a lot of
breaks the mindset. You think that's the one thing that we do, and we shoot and move, and we turn and shoot, and we're constantly trying to shoot from different positions, and we're constantly aware of what is around us. I would assume that a cop, man, the minute you step out of your car, though, man, you're like, okay, anyone, anywhere.
Yes. And I think that lends to a lot of the fatigue, right? Because it's anyone, anywhere, but I've been doing this for 5 years and I haven't got shot at yet.
And you're constantly vigilant. And if you're vigilant for that long of a time, right, if you're vigilant like that every day, day in and day out, you can't. I mean, we see guys that went on 10, 12 deployments that have come back that are they got a little bit of PTSD going on. Well, imagine doing that every day for 20 years and staying vigilant like that.
Yes. And I look at all of that stuff, and I see with the limited amount of time that you can dedicate to it, because there's so many other components to, and really my specialty isn't working with law enforcement, but when I see what they're going through and the mistakes they get made, and then everybody Monday morning quarterbacks it. I'm like, where could you, with knowing all those constraints about, time and budget, help out? And so I see a couple of little things, but I think on that piece on the house, there's a lot of academic stuff that we do before we ever get to go in a house. Somebody gets out a whiteboard or butcher block or whatever and talks through that stuff and talks through what your mindset should look like and all that other stuff, so that by the time you go in and do it, you have a fundamental understanding of everything that's going on and why you're doing it too. Because I see a lot of tactics get used or reused or misused that would work great, say in Afghanistan, where I'm going to pie this door. Well, in Afghanistan, I'm basically dealing with 12 inches of mud, and bullets don't go through that. So I can take my time. But in America, where it's drywall and 2x4s, dude, it doesn't matter if they have a rifle or a shotgun or a pistol, ripping right through it. And so it's when you're taking your time at the threshold, I'm like, oh man, and so there's a lot of that stuff, because stuff that we did, and guys that had a longer career saw it evolve and saw it change. So the way I cleared in 2005 was not the way I cleared in 2017. Because the mission changed, because we learned stuff, because the enemy changed.
We had that conversation not 2 weeks, no, maybe less than a month ago. We had the same conversation.
Yeah.
I remember getting in the Army in 1996, and you held your M16A2 with your arm extend it out on that forward grip. And then I got to group in 02 and we put broomsticks. For people that don't know, it's a piece of plastic about, I don't know, 4 to 6 inches. Some of them are real thick. Some of them are thin, probably, you know, like this. Some of them are thicker. And it was a broomstick, and you pulled that broomstick back into you. And then, I don't know. When I got the group in 02. So then by the time I got to Oki in 08, people were using the forward angled grip, which was nothing but not even a 45 or 30-degree angle that came off the front of your gun, and your hand was back out in front of your gun again, but underneath it. Hell, by the time I retired in 2016, 20 years later, there was no forward angled grip. People were just gripping the forward grip back to doing what we were doing in 1996.
Right. And nobody was using pressure pads or anything else. Everybody was trying to manipulate everything directly. And like that is what happened to all of training. Like so much of it and so much technology change. And dude, I can't even imagine what it's like now with all the drone stuff and everything else like tacked on there. But to get back to like the simple stuff, I think there's got to be also that like really like basic understanding of why am I doing it this way? What works and doesn't work? Because then you can change it too. If you understand why and you see that isn't present, you can adapt and change it to the environment, to the mission. And I see a lot of that is missing now. At the same time, they'll be able to go through like where they're going to put everything on a traffic stop, or how they're going to talk to somebody when they start to, you know, clench their fist, or the person starts to like, you know, have aggressive body language or whatever other stuff. Like they can, you know, delve into that and go into like minutia, but once they go into the house, right, they can't. And it's just the training isn't focused there because their day-to-day isn't focused there. Their experience isn't there.
And it's not something that they're going to do on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
Or every once every 6 months, if you're lucky.
Yeah. And that's the other thing. And then there's companies like Unit Solutions that are developing equipment that's going to be really good and really helpful because it's so much cheaper than Sims. It's not a firearm. So like those are what I use for force on force, because like insurance wise, liability wise, safety wise, it's just way
What is it
easier.
called?
Unit Solutions. So they have, and Chris Spence. So Chris Spence was one of the like 5th group dudes that went to Afghanistan on horses. He works with them. He's the guy. Kate Colvin actually turned me on to him. So when I was looking for a way to do good force on force training, that thing takes it to where, like, to me, right, like for 10 minutes before your shift, you could do a force on force scenario and get graded on your marksmanship. So like
I've never heard of these dudes. So I'm looking at it right now. So are these like, so okay. Look, we're gonna back up real quick. So what this conversation got started is James runs Primal Solutions is his company. And so before we dive more into this stuff, spend like 3 minutes talking about like how we got, like what your company does and what you do and where you're located and that stuff.
Yeah. So really, like I was going into doing contracting, and so I was doing corporate consulting, and I was doing contracting overseas, and I wanted a company so I could do tax, like just for tax purposes. That was it. So I started a company. I didn't think it was ever going to be customer facing. So I was like listening to Rob Bailey, and like the Primal album had come out. And so I was like, Primal. And then I was Solutions, done. And then COVID hit, and almost everything I was doing stopped, and the ranges were still open. And I was going shooting with some civilian dudes anyway. And they were like, dude, why don't you just charge people for this? I would pay for this. And I was like, you would pay for this? Like, yeah. All right. So that was it. And
the knowledge that we throw around at the range on a daily basis, man, people in the opposite world will pay for it.
Yeah. So I was like, sweet. And started charging some of the people who I'd just been like hanging out with, being like, dude, just if you buy my ammo, I'll go shoot anytime you want. And so I had a pretty good little start in COVID. Stuff started to pick up, and I was like, man, I actually like doing this so much. I'm going to do this instead of contracting, or at least when I'm home from contracting. When I'm home, I'm going to do this stuff. And so like on deployment, I'm like, I'm going to make a website. I'm going to do this. But then I started to really get critical about how I looked at it and how I wanted to do training, because to me, and have you done any like civilian, like normal, just like go shoot up tactical courses or anything?
No.
Okay.
Absolutely zero. I've been to one. I am the laziest fucking retired SF guy when it comes to that shit.
Rad.
Like I keep up. Like, it's really weird, dude. I keep up with like how I can prep my home if the fucking world goes to shit. Like, I have guns placed at certain positions in my house that if someone breaks in a certain door, like, you're fucking dead to rights.
Yeah.
I have a 9mm laser that I shoot with. It's, a little 9mm that goes in.
Yeah.
And I shoot at a target with that, and I'll just sit on the fucking couch, and my wife will be like, what the fuck are you doing? And I'll just pull out and just fucking click it away, man, for, I don't know, a fucking hour, and shoot 50, 60, 70 fucking rounds out of that fucking laser and see where I'm at. And I'll put it anywhere from 10 to 25 meters, or 10 to, I can't use meters in my fucking house, but 10 to fucking 25 feet away, depending on where I'm at.
Yeah.
But I've been to one civilian range, and I was all gung-ho. I bought a fucking year subscription to that, unlimited use. I went one time. It did something on that fucking range that I was like, this is one of the safest things I've ever done. Man, I thought them dudes were going to fucking lose their minds. And I was like, then the one guy pulled me aside and was like, what did you do in your former life? And we got to talking, and he was like, okay, I understand why you're looking at us like we have dicks growing out of our foreheads, and we're looking at you like you have a dick growing out of your forehead. So he laid down some pretty hefty fucking rules for me. And it basically was stand behind the table and you can fucking plank targets, and that's it. And at that point, I was like, I'm just wasting my fucking money after I zero a weapon.
Yeah.
So that's the extent of my range time in 8 years.
Yeah. And I would say, like, a lot of the courses I've been to, they have like this dogmatic adherence to stuff that is straight up rangeisms, and it's going to do you nothing but disservice when you leave the building. And it frustrated me. And a lot of times too, it felt like, and don't get me wrong, it's a tough thing to actually set up a range and make money unless you charge a ton. So I get why it felt that way, but to me, it felt like I was a piece of meat on an assembly line at McDonald's, and I hated it. And so I was like, all right, because I like my buddy Mitch, that was the dude at the tech company. Like, we linked up and had like a little mini Ranger rendezvous in Vegas and went and did a course, and it was terrible. Like, for me personally, like I think it was
a course, like a 3-gun match type deal.
No, we did. It was rad. Like, but the training methodology, and the dude would teach it was an SF guy. He was like, look, the company does it this way, bro. He's like, you got to do it. You got to help me out, bro. Like, he's like, I'm just working. And I was like, okay, cool. But he was like, also, it was an Uzi course. So we're literally, dude, we showed up in like Miami Vice Hawaiian shirts and goofy sunglasses, and we wanted to have, like a good old time. And this dude was like, oh, this motherfucker. And, we had an understanding, but I was like, Mitch was like, so you want to go, let's schedule another one next quarter. And I was like, no, like, I was like, I would rather pay 10 times that and rent our own range, and we just go do our own thing and we get something out of it. And, ultimately, so I tried to change Primal, like, and make it like completely distinct. So literally, like, I got it, like, now it's doing business as Primal Risk, because everybody told me that sounded cooler. And I was like, whatever. Awesome. We're going to do stuff differently though. And so I set it up where the class size is going to be a lot smaller. The student instructor ratio is going to be a lot smaller. All the role players are going to be soft guys, because sometimes, dude, and I've had students do stuff that I couldn't have scripted it. Like, I wouldn't have imagined they're going to do that. So if I have a guy with the acumen, when they make that mistake, that's weird that they just invented, that they get punished in a meaningful way. Like, so that the mistake triggers a lesson that gets learned.
You're basically giving people a course to come to, and then running them through a scenario based.
So It's more like a seminar than real training, because I was like, I can't, in a day, in a weekend, I can't actually make you into some kind of, you know, assaulter. So what I try to do is give them some stuff that will give them lessons learned. So like if I could distill the most important lessons from like flat range at cephalic, from, you know, a shoot house, from a deployment, from something I've just seen as a trend, and be like, hey, you need to have a shift in your mindset or a shift in your approach here and now on this, whatever this thing is. Um, that's kind of been it. So I put together this course and I run it. Granted, like the way I was building it up and the stuff that I still was doing on the side is I would just do like basically like range time with the boys, and we'd go out and I would set up the kind of flat range that I thought was useful um, to just try multiple different types of drills that would cover the most skills, and then be like, okay, so you know now we have a bunch of data because we've done mag changes, we've done kneeling at 50 yards, we've done walking and shooting, we've done this and this, and these are the things I think you should work on. So I'd write them like a little prescription and be like, go do this for 10 minutes a day. Next week, we'll see how you're doing. But the course was like the big deal. That was the thing that I was like, this is what I want to do. And that was where I would get Kate, who's a performance psychologist. I think when she left SOCOM, she was the most senior performance psych in the whole program.
You're
She'd
talking
worked
about
with,
Kate Coburn, right?
yeah, Kate had worked with every American soft element, every NATO soft element. Like she had been there and done it. And so she had seen so many guys in a shoot house. This was one of my favorite things, was like to try to keep people engaged and learning, even when they weren't doing reps. We would put them up on the catwalk in the house during force on force. And
Oh,
Kate
so
would
Kate
have,
would come down and work with you.
oh yeah, yeah. So everybody's hooked up to a heart rate monitor, and Kate is following them around with the iPad, watching them make bad decisions, and it was awesome. But so Kate's running around, and literally she's sitting on the catwalk, and somebody's like about to have a moment because I had set up a little dilemma for them in the next part of the house, and she goes like just real quietly, like she's like, his heart rate's going to go up 10 beats a minute when he gets to that corner. And everybody sitting there was like, and then it happened. And then the dude, had his, had his dilemma unfold, and it was really good. But everybody was like, afterwards, they were like, dude, she knew exactly what was going on. She knew what we were thinking, like what mistakes we were making. And she was able to like give me like meaningful input. And I've never had that before. And I was like, right? Yeah. Nobody uses those people like that. And I would say even in soft, we don't use them because it is still a new program, right? Like they've been doing it for years now, but it's still kind of new. And I don't think we've used them to the max capability of what that can do for an individual and their training regimen. And then for a team too. But for like me, for training, I set everything up for individuals, right? Because it's like, I'm not going to wake up in the middle of the night and have somebody in my house and be like, call the boys and be like, oh, don't worry, honey, they're going to be here as soon as the bar closes. Like, that's not it. So I trained everybody as an individual. But yeah, so I'd set up, and basically the first thing I would do would be a performance on demand stress test. So everybody shows up, gets their heart rate monitor on, they get an introduction, what they're going to do. I do a demo of it. And then it has, it's kind of multifaceted, right? Because there'd be a little bit of brain games in there while they're doing it. Because I think that that's a big thing. People don't realize, or maybe some of them do, but when you have a moment like that where you're going to have either you're going to die or they're going to die, right? Like just simplify it. You're going to die or they're going to die. Your brain has a reaction to that, and it's a big reaction. Having somebody like Kate that can be standing there that knows what's going to happen and where the wheels are going to fall off, we put a scenario together so that when the wheels fall off, there's going to be a lesson learned there. And really cool to see. Like, people go through it, because I have had a guy that was a champ car driver. I have had a Muay Thai champion go through my course. I've had like a top 50 mortgage broker go through my course. I had a person that owns a education, like basically a private school, but like a bunch of them go through my course. And it blew me away how they went through it, because I would give them like almost a Kim's game where I'd show them something for like a brief moment and they have to remember it. Then they go do a whole stress shoot. And then at the end, I ask them and see what they remember. And it's applicable to the scenario, right? Me and Kate came up with it, and it's applicable to the scenario. But like, for instance, that, she was calling herself a teacher until I found out what she really did. But like, everybody, I show it and I give them like 10 seconds to look at it, right? 10 seconds I felt like is enough time, but it's still just a snapshot. I showed her and she's like, okay. And I was like, do you not want to look at it anymore? She's like, nope. At the end, when Kate did the interview with her, every single one of like the criteria that Kate was looking for, she hit every component of it. And she wasn't trying. Like, she was worried about her shooting. She was worried about, there's physical stuff, because I had talked about like you get punished if the physical fitness part isn't at least to a level. She was worried about that. She didn't care about that at all. And it was in the bag. Like, it was crazy.
When was the last time you ran one of those courses?
It's been a minute. Last year I ran one. So unfortunately, I'm actually right now looking for a new place to do it, because I was renting from Academy. It's a Constellus company. So where they train Navy like people. They closed it, and they didn't renew the contract, and they closed it because that facility was set up to do that kind of training, right? The flat range didn't have bays. There wasn't like stuff like that. The flat range was made to shoot and move and put obstacles out there and put everything out there. The shoot house was made like how we would have a shoot house. They had classrooms, they had a combatives area, they had everything. Now that that's gone, I'm actually looking for a place to recreate that. But yeah, dude, so fun. And to see people, because a lot of these people had performed at a high level at something else. And so stuff that we thought is going to, like, everybody's going to not be able to do, I would have guys do it and just keep going, like not even realize that they just skated through my dilemma, and it didn't phase them at all. And I don't know. For me, that stuff was really fun, really pumped me up.
So I have a story about Kate. I left the Army. For those guys that don't know, I left the Army. I retired and I went and played college football. And my first game, I had, I think 3 snaps, and they all went off like that. There was no problem. My second game, my first snap was high, and my second snap went over my punter's head. And it was rough, dude. My third snap hit him in the face mask. I didn't have the greatest punter, but still, it probably should have been lower. It was a rough game. And I called Kate afterwards, and I was like, what the fuck, dude? And she's like, listen, man, she goes, you've always been successful at everything you've done in the Army so far.
Yeah.
She's like, but you're doing something you've never done before, and you've only done it for a short time. So you've got to get out of your own way. And the only way to get out of your own way is to continue to rep through this. And so it was really good advice. There was some more advice to that, but it was really good advice. And that's the last conversation I had with her. And I think that was right before she went to NATO.
Yeah.
Which would have been 8 years ago.
Years ago, yeah.
9. You brought up a thing about Unit Solutions. Do you use their kits?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I've had like maybe 5 malfunctions with the Unit Solutions.
So is that a whole?
Using it.
Like, is that a whole gun?
It's a whole, yeah. So it's a whole gun. It's a non-firearm, right? There's different ones that are made to be the same weight. Everything's supposed to work exactly the same as like a real one. Their mags hold 30, right? They're the weight of a loaded mag. if you drop the mag, it's not going to be the end of the world. They don't jam up. You don't have to worry about not shooting too fast and heating up the barrel and then melting rounds in the barrel. Like there's a ton of the stuff, you know, the complaints. There's a ton of those complaints about the other systems that aren't there on the unit. The unit guns have they've refined it a lot. And it's so for me, when I found out about it, I was just trying to save money. After the first course I ran, all of my instructors were like, "This is pretty good." And I was like, yeah, these are sweet. And I've rented them out to other folks to use them and had them be like, so I'm going to buy these. But I also I would send them home with guys. So say again, I ran a range and gave guy a prescription. Oftentimes I'll be like, here, take this, take a couple mags, and now you can go work on this in your garage. And dude, it's a really good tool. You can use it for marksmanship and manipulations and everything else, but it's great.
What is that? What is the ammo that comes out of that?
They're basically paintballs.
I remember. So for those, pretty much everyone that watched this is going to understand. But when I first got the group, we had Sims. For those guys, and we still have it. And for those guys that don't know, Sims are it's an upper that's basically blue that you take off your lower, you split the receivers, put the blue barrel on it, clip it together, and then it uses a mag that's probably, I don't know, 6 inches. It just fits in or holds a 9-round cartridge made by FX, and it's got a blue or a pink soap type paint tip on the end. If you get shot in the thigh or somewhere where it's just your uniform, it hurts like a motherfucker if it's close. And we used to call it pain is compliance. You'll learn how to come through a hallway or through a door, right? Because I'm going to shoot you in the fucking thigh and we're going to figure it out, right? Pain is compliance. And the biggest argument about those, I remember in Sephardic, the biggest argument is that if you use Sims that night or the next morning, you would spend an hour with acetone, fingernail polish remover, and a rod and a pad, and you would soak it acetone and just in and out of that barrel, man, until it was clear, because through the day you would just get so much of that paint and plastic residue stuck in there. So before I went to Sephardic, when I was in 2nd Battalion, they came out with this UTM round. Did you ever use those in Ranger Battalion?
I used them at group.
Oh my God. We used them one time before the guys went to Iraq in 2006 or 6 in 2006. Holy shit, dude. So that the whole premise was, you just change the bolt out, kind of like a CERTA round, which is, for those of you who don't know, CERTA, short range training ammo, SRTA, and it's a plastic tip. And you just change the bolt and you can shoot this basically plastic tip bullet out, and you can save money and shoot it in the house. You don't need to have the Durablock, and it's not a live round, blah, blah, blah. And those UTM rounds would fucking break skin and get plastic get lodged in people's faces. The UTMs were just too strong, and they never should have been marketed.
Yeah.
But I've never looked at buying any of this stuff. How is the unit solutions? You said they were by far cheaper.
Yeah.
Does that cheaper go into that?
Yeah. So you're looking at 30 cents a round ish. They have different kinds of rounds and stuff, but you're looking at 30 cents a round. So the round, just that price alone, it's way, way less than what you're looking at with Sims. The biggest difference is it's a CO2 shooting a paintball, basically, right? So instead of creating heat, it's actually cooling off the barrel as they're going through. So you can put it on full auto and just blast full auto and just let it run. It's not going to be a concern. Whereas if you try to do that with more than 20 rounds, even maybe just 20 rounds out of your Sims gun, it's not going to work, right? So if you get into a house where you're engaging more than one target, you might need to kind of slow your cadence just to make sure you don't put your gun down for the rest of the day.
A lot of pistols come out with sim rounds, bro.
Yeah, which is good training, right? Like we'd be like, it's good training. But so the biggest difference I would say is like the Sims works almost exactly how your firearm works, in that the cartridge has to eject. There's no cartridge to eject with the Unit Solutions system. So the one thing is if you have a student that does weird stuff, like for whatever reason, put their hand too close to the magwell or grips the magwell, and they can put their finger in front of the ejection port. On a unit gun, they're not going to get the punishment that they would get from a Sims gun. That's probably the only real like meaningful difference, but an instructor can just look at it and be like, hey, you need to move your hand. It's not as effective as the instructor saying, hey, you need to move your hand, and then somebody having a malfunction and then a meltdown because their gun went down and they didn't know it. But it's a CO2 powered paintball, but it works really, really well. The system that they set up, that they designed, works really, really well. The size and weight of everything is the same as your gun that you used before. And then it's because it's a non-firearm, like, dude, I don't have all of the stress that comes with, changing those things out and working that stuff out, and somebody not changing it out, whatever safety considerations that you could have. You can imagine having nightmares over somebody forgetting which iteration they're on. None of that is there with those, because it's like, everybody go put away your guns, come get my guns, and this is what we're doing now.
What is the sim? So I looked up Unit Solutions. This is what I've been doing on my blog.
Yeah.
And Unit Solutions, this is what I hate about FX, man, Simunitions, is that they don't have, you can't find prices on their website. It's like the only thing we sell to is military.
Well, yeah, and that's basically what it is now. So, and then you have to do a course in order to basically be qualified to buy them. So you have to go do a course that you have to pay for to be qualified to buy them. Obviously, I'm sure if you're a big government customer, the course is free. But if you're like a little guy that's like, hey, man, I started a company. They're like, all right, dude. So you need to spend a minimum of this much money and do this course. And I was like, oh. So whereas like Unit Solutions, I was like, hey, I want this many of these. Can you do this? And they were like, hell yeah, man. And they sent them. And they're like, by the way, if you want to tell other people about them, use this code. I'm like, oh, wow.
Oh, wait, Simunitions gives you an ultimatum. Like, you will go through this course. Like, bro, I've shot more of these fucking things than probably you have.
Yeah, but Sims, you have to do it. And dude, safety wise, I get why they do it. I'm not saying they're wrong for doing it. Could they make it an online one for dudes like us? Sure. But do they want to? Hey, no. And it's just, maybe it's just the barrier to entry. But the other part is the per round cost of them.
What is the per round cost of that? Oh, like double?
Depending on how many you're buying, it could be $2 a round. I mean, if you're buying them by a million. Yeah.
Holy, I had no, well,
yeah.
When you're buying, when you are the U.S. government and you
buy a lot.
Yep.
Yeah. You buy a lot. When you're like little old me, right? When you're like, hey man, I started a company. They're like, do I want to take this kid's call?
Yeah. How, so were there like, so they have, for those guys that don't know, they also have a munition set for a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff now. It's like Simunitions they have a complete kit for a saw. They have a kit for a sniper rifle. Yeah. They didn't have that shit when I was in, or at least we didn't use any of it. But our sim barrels were, fuck man, those things were probably 30 years old.
Yeah. And it's like, hey, it's a fantastic system. I'm not trying to like just shit on them.
I mean,
it wasn't the solution. It wasn't the answer. For me, it wasn't. And I was relieved to be able to do that, because the money I saved on the systems and the money I saved on the ammo, I put into my stuff. So like I put dedicated sights on all of them, I built out the guns. You know what I mean?
For your clients.
For the clients. So the clients really benefited from that, especially because any of the guys that have done the Sims course, what they do is they get, because you need a lower, right? So it'd be like, oh, take this off, do this. And then if some guy has a weirdo gun, you know, like some dude has, I don't know, some guy brought like a SIG Rattler or something to the course, like it's not going to be compatible. All of that got killed by just having unit guns. Like as soon as I had the unit guns, I was like, oh, dude, I'm so glad I did this.
That probably takes a lot of liability away from you too, man. You're not worried about guys moving barrels.
Yes,
and
my insurance company was very happy. Yeah, my insurance company is very happy because legally, if you have a Sims gun, you're pointing a gun at another person.
Correct.
So, yeah, legally it was like everything got better by having those, and that's the other thing too. So, like for law enforcement entities or entities that don't have the time and money that SOCOM has, that is it's a massive training benefit to have all of that liability, all of those problems, all that, you know, switch this out. Now you got to switch out all your sites, like just build a dedicated system, make it a clone of your other one, and then pick it up, you know, do your practice, do your training, do your scenarios, and then walk out the door and forget about it. And you don't have to rebuild your gun, because now if I assemble my real gun wrong, I'm walking out with a dead man's gun. It's no good.
Yeah, so, I mean, I'm sure that the insurance for you was, I'm sure the liability went down greatly.
Oh yeah. It was the conversation was that I had with insurance company was hilarious. They were like, "What?" So basically paintballs, and I'm like, "Yeah," and they're like, "Cool." I was like, "All right."
So if people want to look this up or do a corporate event or talk to you about it, they can go to your website and get in contact with you, correct?
Yeah, so, primalrisk.com all day.
I will put, like I do always for these guys that have companies, I will put his company website and his company email in the description so that James has all of that stuff. And if you need, or you guys have all that stuff, you watch it. If you need to get in contact with him, you can. He is in Southern California, so I'm surprised you get away with it in that state, man. But I guess this is the deal, man. You hear so much bad shit, and I guess it's twofold, right? Like Rob Sealer says the same thing. Like he's in Washington, and I've had him on the podcast twice, and every time he's like, "Man, we watch the news, and at King 5 in Seattle, we think Washington D.C.'s burning to the ground." And it's just like when we watch the news or something out here, we feel that like California, Oregon, and Washington are basically torching themselves. And I don't necessarily know that to be true, but a lot of it being hyperbolic.
Yeah. So they are, right? Like they are. If you're from here and grew up here, you remember a time when it was different. And if you don't, you're lying to yourself. So, but there's pockets that are really bad, and then there's pockets that are completely different. So like an example would be California has more people on active duty than any other state. Now it's also the most populous state, but that's a big deal. As soon as you get outside the cities in California, I would say by and large, this is just I'm just approximating, but it's basically stars and bars. It is just, it's farmers and, cowboys, and it's completely different, right? Because a ton of ag comes out of California. I grew up on a farm in California, right? That stuff is there. And so if you go to those places, you see a completely different California. If you go to Orange County, right? Like we're behind the orange curtain. You get across the county line and it changes like that. And then the further you get away from LA, the less of the bullshit is there.
We seen that. So Jen and I were dating at the time, and Oregon, I went to the Rose Bowl. And so I was season ticket holder. So I got Rose Bowl tickets. And I'd never been to a Rose Bowl. Like, fuck, man, I can afford to go to a Rose Bowl. It's a once in a lifetime fucking opportunity, right? So we drove from Puyallup, Washington down to Pasadena. And you hit the California border, man, and you start seeing signs for the state of Jefferson. And you see them all the way till you get to almost Sacramento, man, where like Northern California is like, we're done. And if no one's ever heard of the state of Jefferson, go to Wikipedia and type, or just go to Google and type in the state of Jefferson. So it's like Sacramento over to the California border, I think. And then like just south of Eugene, all of Oregon into parts of, I believe, Idaho. And they want it's crazy, man. Like the whole thing has been mapped out. Like put this on the referendum. Like we want to change the state of Jefferson. So I get it's a completely, if you go up, Northern California is completely different.
Yeah. And even away from coastal California is completely different. And then Orange County is completely different. Like, so there was, and nobody will have heard this, right? But there was a couple of years ago, a proposal to break California up into 6 states, and it got enough signatures to make it on the ballot. But the state basically shut it down. The state courts shut it down. But it was, people were like, people are sick of it. And it's like a lot of it is, it's really simple and it's really easy to see if you know people that are like normal, just regular Joes that just like, dude, I go to work, I go home, I want to have dinner with my family and my kids. I want to watch their games. I want to just do that. Like, it's really easy to see because you're like, why does our gas cost $1 more than everybody else's? Right? Like, why do I have this much more tax? Why does all this other stuff cost more? And people are like, well, we're paying for all this good stuff that we're doing for society. And it's like, well, it's not working because if I go to LA, like I can't leave anything in my car. You know what I mean? Because it's probably getting stolen. If I go to San Francisco, same thing. I can't leave anything in my car. So then they're like, so I'm paying for stuff that's not actually fixing the problem. And I think that's the end right there. Is it's like, if I'm paying for it, I want it to work. And now I'm paying for it and it's not.
So not to dive into fucking politics more than I want to, but I had this conversation with a dude on X yesterday. So we can, regardless of what you think of the current president of the United States, I happen to be like the guy, but we've been doing status quo for the last 60 years, right? Now, from 1964, 63, when Kennedy got assassinated until now, from the time Lyndon B. Johnson took over until 2025, maybe 2016, we've been doing status quo. It has been, we're going to do advisory committees. We're going to look into this. We know there's fraud. The GAO is telling us there's fraud, and we're not going to do shit about it. And so I understand there's a lot of people pissed off at what Trump is doing, right? But in the grand scheme of things, this is how I look at it. We have done the same thing for the last 60 years. At some point, man, let a dude do some different shit and see if it pans out well, right? Maybe it will, maybe it won't. I mean, the stock market's lost 4,000 points in the last 3 days. Is that good? No, but can it climb back out of that? Of course it can, right? Is all this government funding waste? And you can call it waste, you can call it fraud, you can call it abuse, whatever you want to call it, man. All these people being paid X amount of dollars that are using fake Social Security numbers or whatever it comes out to be. I do not understand why half of the country is screaming at the top of their lungs, pay all that money out, continue status quo. It blows my mind. Like you just said it, like obviously what we're doing is not working. We are $34 trillion in debt. I believe now that's like $120,000 per American citizen. We can't keep this up. There's no way you can sustain that over the next 60 years. So my problem is this. If the guy leaves office as a complete failure, the budget's at $40 trillion. If he leaves in a success, we're either under 34 trillion or fuck it. I hope he wipes the debt completely clean. But regardless, we've got to try something different. We've been doing the same shit for 60 years. Yeah. I don't care if he puts tariffs. I don't give a fuck who he cuts off. I don't care what government funding he stops. I don't care what fraud they find. I don't care how many payments they stop. If it's good, let's see if it works. Like, let's see if the guy can be successful. Like him or not, it doesn't matter. But we've been doing this same bullshit for 60 years, and something's got to change, man. And I don't know what the answer is, and no one knows what the answer is. But doing status quo, man, like we just talked about it at the beginning of this, right? We started an evolution in 1996 when I got in the Army, where I was holding my gun by the forward hand grip and at the grip with the I can't even think about it now. But I'm holding a gun the way normal motherfuckers hold a gun. And then we moved to a broomstick because that was better. And then we figured out that shit gets caught on doors. It gets caught here. It's better to have an angled forward grip if you want to have something on it. And then we got away from that. And then you brought up push pads. Fuck, I hadn't even thought about it. I hated push pads. For those guys that don't know, we would attack. Oh my God, man. PEQ2s, which are your IR lasers, or they come out with another one since then, a smaller version that's much nicer. Your tack light that was put on your gun. They all had these little cords that would run along the gun and down to, like, most guys would put them on a magazine well, really. So you could just bring your thumb back and hit a push pad, and that push pad would turn your light on, or it would turn your PEQ2 on. Well, 8 years down the road, we figured out, well, we're fucking grabbing the gun from the front again. Why don't we just reach our thumb up and turn the pack on? Or why don't we just reach back and turn the tack light on? Like, how hard is that shit? And push pads went away.
But the
evolution of comms.
Yeah, but normal people don't want to do that change, right? Like, if they're in a bureaucratic mindset, right, where they're like, this is how I do it. This is my schedule. This is how this works. This is how that works. It's always been this way. It's always going to be this way. So the change is really painful. And for some people, hey, this change isn't going to be, there's going to be winners and losers out of this thing. Some people are going to get caught up on that, and it's going to suck for them. I think, though, that what everybody doesn't realize is like, we've got used to a level of pain that is not normal and we don't need at all. Like, the amount of money that we pay in taxes, the amount of time that you're spending, on stuff that doesn't contribute to the bottom line, that stuff needs to change. And there's going to be some pain associated with it. Yeah, for sure. But people need to get over that and think about, if the trends continue, where does it go? And to me, that's where it's like, okay, we got to rip this Band-Aid off at some point. I think that's what's happening right now. I don't know enough about any of that to know. I'm just like, look, man.
Well, we were talking about standard of living, right? So you live in Orange County, which is primarily one of the most expensive places to live in the country, if I'm not mistaken. I live in Harpers Ferry, West Virginia, which is the most expensive county to live in West Virginia. So I think an average house here pre-COVID was about 300, about 300,000, 280, 300,000. I'll tell you what I got mine for. I bought my house for 380 in 2019. Actually, Jen found it and bought it. 3,800 square foot on just under 3/4 of an acre. And that was expensive in this county. That was now this house is worth almost $600,000 because COVID. So people that don't know, I live 55 miles from DC. So when the summer of 2020 happened, we'll just talk about that. All the people in DC that were sick of it moved to Northern Virginia. All the people from Northern Virginia were like, I don't want to deal with this. And they moved to West Virginia and pushed out even farther into Northern Virginia, which then pushed a lot of people into Jefferson County, West Virginia. So I'm 4 miles the way by car to the Virginia border, and I'm 4.5 miles to the Maryland border. Like, when I go to Maryland, I go through West Virginia, and then into Maryland. And on the way back, I do the same thing. And so gas here is like $2.65 a gallon. I think the median home here is about $450, maybe $500,000. I would assume probably more like $450. But we talked 4 weeks ago, What did you tell me a starter home at like 1,200 square foot is where you live?
So if it's a detached home, right? Like if it's not it's a house, a house.
Just a house, no garage.
Yeah. You're talking about $1 million to get a single family home. And it's actually it's technically like the average is a little bit higher than that, but like for that, yeah. And that's not, we're not saying it's in a nice neighborhood. That's a normal, that's just like a normal neighborhood. If you go to an expensive neighborhood, dude. So
What are you paying for gas out there?
around 5. So
Double.
so you got to think about this too, right? LA's a sprawl. So your average person, right, like of average means, is living outside of LA or living outside of even of LA County and commuting. So these people get hurt by these gas prices way more. Like it's way more pain than the people that are a little bit wealthier that live within, the urban area and are like, oh, I don't worry about gas. I have a Tesla. I only have a 10-mile commute. It's not a big deal. Or oh, I ride my bike to work, or I just walk to work. All of those people, like a lot of these problems, they don't feel it. And so I'm like, I don't blame them for not seeing it, because they live in a bubble that's it's kind of insulated from it. But that's a luxury to be in that position, right? uh, I look at it and I would be talking to people at work and I'd be like, dude, how are you guys doing this? Like i cannot I cannot tell you, man. Like I was doing a job for a while, dude. My commute, if I got up and left my house before 5 a.m., was an hour 10. If I waited and left my house at 5:30, an hour and a half to 3 hours. And I didn't know. It was roulette.
That's even worse than DC, bro. Like
Yeah,
if
and
I
that's one
left,
way. That's one way. I just want to make sure that's one way. That's
yeah,
not.
like I would drive 70 miles and I'm doing reverse, right? So I'm
Yeah,
going into DC and then coming
yeah,
around. And on the way home, everyone's trying to leave DC and I'm coming in and then coming north. So my traffic was the 2-lane road that's right out here that I have to take on to get to a 4-lane road.
yeah.
That, so I'll ask you this. So south of us in Loudoun County, which is the county we border, is the richest county, the county that has the most money per capita of any U.S. county, of any county in America, is Loudoun County. And they are widely known for numerous things. Like Raytheon has like a 60-acre fucking campus, dude. That campus is beautiful, by the way. Like, we can knock on Raytheon all we want, man, but that campus is fucking beautiful.
Yeah, they're doing it right.
Yeah, and dude, it is. I gotta say it. So there's roads that run through the campus, right? Because the streets were already made, right? And then they bought on either side. And so they just put walk bridges across it, like walkways. But it's all fenced in. So you never leave the fenced in secure area, if you will. It's ridiculous. Northrop Grumman's there. They have a beautiful campus. Like there's some really cool shit. Yeah. So when you cross over the border and you're driving in northern Loudoun County down to Leesburg, you'll pass 50 to 250 houses that are massive. They make my house look little. I have a 3,800 square foot house. These houses run from, that's probably on the small end, they run from 38 to 7,000 square feet. They're million 5 homes. And people are what we call around here house broke. So the only reason I know this is my old neighbor was a Loudoun County sheriff. And he's like, they buy these houses and they have these really nice cars. But if you ever get called to one of those houses, there's nothing in it. Like they're using a cardboard box to prop up their TV. They're sitting on a futon they bought at IKEA. Their mattress is the only furniture in their bedroom and it's on the floor. And they literally could not afford anything else.
Yeah.
Is that what a ton of those guys are doing that are living within that bubble?
I don't know, man. Like I really don't. I think that there's a certain amount of that for sure. I think there's a certain amount of that for sure. I think that there's a lot of, there's a lot of folks out there that are well dressed, have a new car, and live in a zip code that allows them to have a commute that's not painful, right? Um, but if anything changes, they're hosed, you know. Um, but if anything changes, they're hosed, you know. And
But are they eating ramen noodle every night and not going out? Are
well,
they like
they might, I don't know how they're doing it like that. And that's the thing. Like I'm telling you, man, I would, sometimes I would work around people doing conferences or doing other stuff. And I'd be like, I don't know how they're doing it. Like, I really don't. You know, I've been super fortunate since I left that, you know, my wife and I have done pretty well, and we're hanging out. We definitely had times where we were, you know, scraping to make sure we hit our budget and where we wanted to be. But when I see a lot of those folks, I'm like, dude, I don't know how they're doing it. And that's what kills me is expenses and taxes and other stuff just keeps going up. And so I think they're having to pare down because, again, they bought that house where like it worked when gas was $3 a gallon.
Yep.
Right now it's like $5. So now it doesn't work, right? Or electricity is continuing to go up. Everything is going up, right? Like how, I don't know how they're doing it. Because not everybody's income is going up commensurate with the level that expenses are going up.
correct?
So all things being equal, like you're like, well, where is it giving then? And I really think that like that's a big part is of like why people have this apprehension, because they're like, dude, I like my lifestyle. I'm barely hanging on.
Yeah, I can't have any changes.
Yeah, I can't. And so it's but it's got to change. Like I'm telling you, like its cracks are going to start showing. I think that a lot of the downtowns are having it because there's been since COVID, right? There's been that exodus, and it's probably going to have to change anyway. You know, I look at it too, like people are like running from these problems instead of saying let's change it, right? Because it's easier to move out of LA than it is to change LA. It's easier to move out of California than it is to change California. The thing with that I see is I'm like, so you're allowing the trend to continue. You're allowing this freaking monster to grow and evolve, and it's just going to come chase you. So like I have a good friend in Montana who literally used to live in Bozeman. Then he moved like 20 minutes out of Bozeman, and that wasn't far enough. And I'm like, dude, you're like $7,000 up a mountain on 20 acres. Like, what's next? And he's like, no, this is the Alamo. It's done. Because that dude used to live in the Bay. He used to live in San Francisco, and he left. He went to Portland, and then Portland did what it did, and he left Portland. And due to like, I'm like, what if all of those guys would have stayed in the Bay, would have stayed in California, and would have just said, hey, this isn't going to work. We want to, like, I see what you're trying to do, but this is a 600-pound canary. It looks great. It sounds great, but it just won't fly. If everybody would have just put their foot down then, instead of everybody leaving and having it go and follow you, because the same thing about tyranny, right? Like the brain drain that happened in Afghanistan when that conflict, started in freaking with the Russians, the same thing in Iraq. Like if all of those guys, and hey, sure, move your family out. Say your family's got to go, but you stay and fight. You stay and fight. And that's where I think a lot of that stuff is. And I'm not saying it's got to be a fight. We're not, but you've got to, when somebody pushes, you got to push back, right? And just be like, hey, hold on. That's not going to work.
Yeah, I talked to, I'm actually going to try to get him on the podcast, man. Bacon Man is a former first group guy, and he runs it's called, I don't know if it's a veterans pack. Don't quote me on this, but he runs a pack that gets former soft guys to run for office. And so like he does, I think he's trying to work with Nick Freitas down here in Virginia. He's worked with some other guys that are soft guys that have gone into office, and he's trying to put a lot of soft guys into office. I'm going to try to get him on the podcast to talk about some of this stuff. He's just he's always running politics, man. So the dude's like super busy.
Oh, yeah,
And I thought about running here. The problem with running in West Virginia is it's pretty entrenched, man. And upseating one of these dudes, they really have to like my congressman, man, my representative dude Mooney, he's all right. I mean, he don't do shit. He supports the old man when it supports him, and when he thinks the old man's that's not going to go his constituents' way, he turns a blind eye and says, "Oh, I don't support it." So, and we talk about home prices and stuff, man. And you and your wife have been very smart about things. And I spent the day with two old teammates, or an old teammate of mine and a good friend of mine that I was in Okie with. And then one of those guys moved and was a teammate of mine in 4th Battalion that we know. And he mentioned or said something up to the effect of like retirement soon. And I was like, you know what? I think the number one thing that I see and I hear a lot are guys go out and they buy houses that are so far above what they can afford. It's not even funny. Yeah. Right? When I got approval for my house, they're like, because I was on a contract job and Jen has a good job, they were like, oh, you're approved for $1 million home. And I was like, yeah, that's great. But what will I be able to do outside of that? Like I can go buy $1 million home, but the payment on that's $5,000 a month at a minimum. And what do I do? What job do I have to have? Where do I have to continue to work? Like I have West Virginia. So some of the things like I don't have to work, which is awesome. Second, we have West Virginia season tickets, right? So that's money in itself, not just the ticket, but every time you go to Morgantown, you got to spend it. We spend 2 nights. We go up Friday, spend Friday night, Saturday night, come home on Sunday. And so that all
different is the lifestyle because you've made that choice.
Correct. And so when we were looking for a house, we chose to buy significantly below what we were quoted at because we both had the mindset of like, we want to be able to go and do what we want. And we enjoy going to football games. Everyone knows that. We enjoy going and doing other stuff. Like, fuck, we've been to 70 some stadiums since 2015 when Jen and I started going. We've been to well over 100 football games, and we enjoy doing that stuff.
That's a big
I guess that's the biggest advice I have for guys. Like when you get ready to retire, watch how much you spend on that home, man, because it's going to dictate what you can do and where, if you can go to dinner, if you can go take trips, if you can go on vacations, if you can live and not stress about money all the time. I talked to the guy last week that was like, man, I'm jealous you don't have to work. Now it helps that my wife has a really good job and that
you retired and
I made some good choices.
Did a lot of other stuff, first.
And so, but he's like, man, I bought this $1 million home and there's no way I can't work now. And I'm just like, and he's kicking himself now. He's like, oh fuck, man, I wish I'd have stayed with my other home, but I wanted to buy this one. And I'm like, all you can do is listen. I'm not gonna fucking rag on a dude for financial decisions, but all in all, man, that is the biggest mistake that I see guys that I know when they retire. They buy houses that are so at their highest, like they let that realtor or that financial advisor talk them into like, well, you can afford a $950,000 home.
Yeah, you can't let them because they're it's in their best interest to say that, right?
Oh,
it's in their best interest to say that.
When I bought this house, I submitted all my finance. You got to submit like 6 months of whatever, and 6 months of this. And the mortgage company came back and like, why is this guy only want a house at literally 38% of what I was quoted at? Well, you need to submit some more documents. And finally, I talked to the mortgage broker and I was like, dude, why are you asking for all this other shit? I never had to give my first house. And they're like, the bank cannot understand why a dude who is approved for $1 million wants to buy something at 380, which is 38% of what he's quoted at. Like nobody does that. And I was like, because
everybody that's rich does that.
Correct. 100%.
Everybody that's rich doesn't have all their money in their freaking house. And the bank knows that. They just want your money.
Bro, I was like, I do not want another house. I'm not buying anything more expensive. Like, this is not what I like. And it wasn't a fight, but it was like, I had to explain,
Right. Yeah.
I want to be able to live. Yeah. Jenna writes, not everyone wants to live like the Joneses. And like,
Yeah.
but
That's it.
I
That's
couldn't
it.
afford I have damn near a world-class facility in my gym. In my garage is a gym. I could not afford that had I bought $1 million house. You were talking about doing renovations a couple weeks ago when we talked, and you were like, but you guys did exactly what you looked at your budget, and like you said, you scrimped and you saved and you pocketed every penny you could for years. And now you're to the point where if you want to renovate, your kitchen, you could do it and not worry about, oh shit, dude, like where did that money come from? Are we going to be able to do X, Y, and Z? And those are things that I think that there are a lot of guys that retire that they're used to getting that paycheck on an every 2 weeks or once a month basis. That's always going to come in. It's the same thing. If they get promoted, they get more money.
Yeah.
And now they get a contract job and they're making twice as what they were, and they buy this ungodly house, and that contract job may or may not be there in a year, may not be there in 3. If you're like me, you piss off the wrong person, you might not have that contract job very long.
Well,
it just depends.
And you can piss off the wrong person and really speak your mind and really be yourself and really put yourself out there at work the way you want to, if you believe in it, if you're secure because you made those choices. Those smart people that, you know what I mean? Like Jenna said, like they've made those choices. And I think that's the other part, like when you said keeping up with the Joneses, or when Jenna said that, like, you don't necessarily know what the Joneses make. The Joneses might be Nick, who bought way less house than he could afford. And if everybody in your neighborhood bought the max that the bank would let them, then that's how they're stuck and you're not. But they don't know that, right? Because you probably don't walk around to your neighbors and be like, hey, how's it going? Like,
yeah, I know.
You're not doing that. So, and I think that's the other part is like looking at what somebody else is doing and then trying to copy that behavior, but not knowing their whole situation. Because you either don't know that they had way more money and could have bought a way bigger house and didn't, and that's where that money came from, or that it's all on credit cards and they're stressed out of their mind. You don't know that. And making the decisions based on what other people are doing that's not the right thing, right? It's got to be decisions.
And I think society has changed a lot in the last decade. Like I bought my first house in Fort Lewis or in Puyallup in 2008, right before the stock market crashed. So I bought that house in August, and in November, or about November, in the following August. I bought it in 07. In the following August, 08, stock market crashes. My house went from being worth almost $300,000. I bought it for $260. Bam, dude, it's worth $180,000. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, this was the worst investment. And that's what I learned. I bought a house that I should have never been able to buy. I didn't buy it. I bought it at almost my highest price point. I paid my ass off for it. I was able not to go in debt. I was able not to be fucked up, but I should have never been able to buy that house. I should have never, ever bought. It was the worst financial decision I ever made, dude. But I had a house and I was living in Washington, and but what I'm getting is I knew every one of my neighbors. 2 houses away and across the street. I knew all my neighbors. I knew their families. They could come knock on my door for anything. One guy borrowed my lawnmower. Another guy, when I would be deployed, would mow my front yard and then weed whack my backyard every 3 weeks and just be like, hey, you're going to have to clean up when you get home, dude. But super cool. I've lived here for almost 6 years, and I know one neighbor who used to be in E6 in the Marines. I think he was a comms guy. He works cyber now. He just got remarried. His kid is homeschooled. He's a super cool dude. But all my other neighbors, I couldn't tell you what they do. I couldn't tell you where they work. I couldn't tell you their names.
That's a funny thing, man. Like, how much of that do you think is the time, and how much do you think of that is the place?
So there's 2 things I think that happened. When I was in Washington, my next door neighbor was a Filipino dude married to a Filipino lady, and they had 2 young kids. And bro, I lived in that house from '08, and that dude didn't realize I was in the army till I came home from Afghanistan in 13. And I was walking in my house and I was carrying a bag with a uniform hanging out of it. And he was like, "You're in the fucking army?" And I was like, "Yeah." And it just happened. I did not plan this. It happened that my sleeve was hanging over my bag and you could see my tab. And he was like, "You're a fucking SF guy." Like, I've lived next to an SF guy for 5 years and had no fucking idea. Like, I didn't even know you were in the army, bro. That is how well I hid that shit. And I didn't mean to hide it. The guy next door to me knew I was in the army. He was a Navy dude. They had small kids, a boy and a girl. People that moved in next were single in their 20s. He got pregnant. They had a baby before we left. But I think when I moved in here, there was already a clan of parents and everyone had small kids and we didn't have any kids. Like, our kids are grown. Like, my daughter's 19. She lives in Washington. Jen's boys, one of them's in Ohio. The other one's in the Air Force in fucking Utah. So we were like, the people that lived here before us had 2 young kids and we didn't have any kids. So and they were all used to playing in our yard, I think, because our yard's huge. And then I put a fence up for our dogs, and like, some big dude moves in, he puts up a fence, changes the landscape, doesn't have any kids, isn't standing. A bus stop's right here at the corner of our cul-de-sac, right? Like, he's not standing out here glad handing with us every day. I think that was part of it.
Yeah.
I think the other part of it is Jen and I are not as outgoing as we used to be. And I just don't think that we look and go, "Hey, I want to get to know you. Let me shake your hand." I still don't think we give a fuck. Now, we know our neighbors. Like, I know Ben next door, the Marine. The guy on the other side of me, he's a contractor. They're roughly our age. When he drives by about every 6 months, he'll stop and we'll shoot the shit for 20, 30 minutes. But other than that, man, like, everyone else has small kids that are between the ages of 3 and, well, now they're probably 7 and 15. And I just don't have anything in common with people in their 30s that have young kids. Like, I'm not going to PTA meetings. I'm not fucking, So that's part of it too, I think. Do you know your neighbors inside and out? Like, I used to.
Not inside and out, but we know them pretty well. Like, and a few of them we know. I would say we know, pretty darn well. Like, we'll go, had them over for dinner, had their kids over for like our nephew's birthday party, stuff like that. But that's also, dude, that was another thing that surprised me when we moved down here. Was the first neighborhood we moved into, we rented because we didn't know how it was going to work out. We didn't know where we were going to want to live. So we rented a place. And when we were moving in, I was like, every house in this neighborhood has an American flag on it except ours. So I was like, all right, well, I got go put one in, like, to make sure I fit in. And everybody would come over and talk all the time and just be like, "Hey, how's it going? I was walking by. Hey, how's it going?"
What year was that?
2018.
Okay.
Yeah, 2018. And then we moved into our neighborhood in 2019 when we bought this place, which the timing, we didn't know the timing was going to be what it was. We bought this place because we could afford it and because we really, really, really wanted to live here. Like, that was it. And so we weren't thinking about it in investment wise. I was a little scared. I was like, I think we're at the top of the market. What if this happens? What if that happens? But we could afford it. So, and we could afford it just on one of our incomes. That was like, so we were like, okay, we're going to do this. This is scary. We're going to do this. And then when we got in here and we started meeting our neighbors, and we were like, this is the best thing we've ever done, to have neighbors that are like, dude, if we're gone and a contractor comes around that we've told them is going to come around, but they drive a different truck, like, we'll get, like, a neighbor will be like, "Hey, you showed up in this truck today." So this is like, I'm like, "Yep, that's our guy." I'm like, "Cool." Or like, if I leave and I forget to lock the door, like, one of the neighbor kids takes care of the cats. And they'll be like, "Oh, you left the door unlocked. I locked it for you when I was feeding your cat." Like, it's way different than I had anticipated it being when we moved to California. Like, where we lived in Washington wasn't like that.
So I'm experiencing the exact opposite. right? When I lived in Washington, it's what you are doing right now, right?
Yeah.
I knew all my neighbors. They would come over and drink beers. And maybe that's part of like Jen and I don't drink anymore. And if we do, it's very rare and maybe one or two. Now I know Ben and his wife would come over a lot, or we would go over there a lot more, but they drink a lot, but we just don't drink. Right. And so I don't know, man. It's like I have this massive gym in my garage, and you would think like I've talked to like Blair Wagner and me are really good friends. He used to be a Thor guy. Blair's like, man, I would be at your house every day. I heard those garage doors open and like, hey man, can I lift? Hey, if you let me in the garage and lock your house door, like I'll clean the gym after I lift.
Hell yeah.
I've had absolutely nobody ever even approach me about working out or lifting. Not one.
Is it because you're an ogre? Are you like in the gym just like grunting and throwing and like smashing things?
But I mean, I'm like, I'll take a yoke out and put 700-800 pounds on it and carry a yoke, or I'll be in a sandbag, or you'll see me doing Atlas stones in the garage. So maybe that's part of it, or logs. Yeah. Maybe that's part. People are like, I don't want to fucking live with that guy because I'm not. Maybe, but in the grand scheme of things, like I don't. I get it, man. Like I'm in a way, I'm glad no one comes over and fucking lifts, but in another way, I'm like, man, like no one wants to come over and fucking and lift anything. Like it's funny. So strange. Yeah. But funny. Again, so we don't have kids.
I would probably be like trying to get a membership.
It is out of control, but it's just weird, man. And maybe it's because I'm a fucking asshole too. That could be part of it. Like I'm loud. And I'll say this though, there's been a change here. I was me and Ben, I think were the only two, maybe the guy that works for the State Department. There might've been three of us that had an American flag on our house. Now everybody has it. I looked out the side the other day and I was like, fuck, man. Every house, as far as I can see, has an American flag hanging on it now. And I was like, oh shit. Like that's new. Even the lady that lives over here, she has, oh man, she's got an Easter flag, a Steelers flag, she puts everything up but an American flag. Hell, she's got an American flag flying now.
Oh shit. Okay.
Oh yeah. I'm like, even there's an Indian family, and I'm a big cricket guy. Don't ask me. I learned it when I was in the UAE. So I actually subscribe and watch the IPL, the Indian Professional League cricket. This is on every day from the end of March. I think March 28th it starts and it goes to like May 15th. And they play one or two matches a game. Anyway, so the Indian guy, he's a big fucking cricket guy. And hell, they even put up an American flag.
Dude, hey, respect, man. I love seeing that stuff because I don't know, man. There's a few neighborhoods down here in Orange County that when I go to, and I'll feel like it's the 4th of July because of that. But that's just every year. Like if you go to Newport and you walk around, you'll be like, oh shit. And it's not the 4th of July. That's just how it is. And I don't know, man. For me, good feeling, dude. Like when I watch your intro and it's like there's the freaking eagle and the flag, and I'm like, yeah. So the same thing in a neighborhood. Like,
and I don't know if that's a tide, that if that's a notice that something's changing, or if who knows, man. But more people got American flags up now than when I moved in here in 2019.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's a good. I think that's a good trend, man. I look at a lot of that stuff, and I talk to a lot of guys about that stuff. Like I'll be at the SFA, and again, dude, like there's guys that have been in California, for a long, long time in the SFA, and when we talk about it, man, and it goes like it ebbs and flows, right? And so when I see like the trends going in a way where people are like more proud of their home, more proud of their, neighborhood, more proud of their country, I'm like, that's a good, to me, that's a good sign. Right.
I think especially if it's probably the most flags we've probably seen up collectively since 9/11.
Wow. Yeah.
Would you agree?
I mean, yeah, and this is funny because like I don't know how much I attributed it to like just the kind of the current sentiment, or if it was like, because I'm like, well, it's Orange County, of course. But, and to your point though, I will say, like, I literally called Mel. I called my wife and was like, honey, Google took me off the freeway and took me through like some rando neighborhoods in LA. And I was like, I called her. I was like, babe, I'm in some random neighborhood in LA and there's American flags everywhere. And I just saw 3 Trump signs and I'm like, I don't know what just happened. And then she was like LA, LA. And I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Definitely changing.
Yeah, man, I'm excited. Like I said, I know that there's a lot of people. I don't think there's a lot. I think that's when you look online and when you hear the news, you're talking about a small, minute portion of of society that has a loud mouth. And I'm not saying that, like I'll say this. It's not just one, it's not one-sided, right? If I had it, if I was king for a day, man, I would if I could investigate all 535 members of Congress, I bet we'd come up with 485 of them that were fucking crooked. There's probably 50 people that aren't crooked in Congress. Right? At some point, a lobbyist has bought them or compromised them or blackmailed them. And at some point, they are bound to the money. Nick Freitas, he was a 3rd Battalion guy, 1st group dude. He has been a state representative for the Culpeper District in Virginia he's coming up 10 years. And he just came out a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, and said he's not running for re-election. And he's like, the reason I'm not running for re-election is because I've been a state representative for 10 years. And I believe that there is a certain point where my civic duty in the public service is now over. So I am turning over the reins, and this is the next lady that's going to take my spot. I fully endorse her. You should too. What she says she's going to do, she does. But I'm bowing out. I'm not running again. And he's got a successful podcast. It's Nick Freitas. I think it's just the name of the podcast. He does a thing called Doge Watch. Now it's like a 15-minute segment once a week where he goes and talks to senators, representatives. He sat down with President Trump at one point. He's talked to some other people in Washington. He has a super, super awesome podcast that really dives into a lot of stuff. And he's pretty fair and open to both sides and how things are run and why we're doing what we're doing and how certain things affect. So if you get a chance to watch his podcast, it's really, really good.
But I should check that out. I would actually like to see that. The Doge Watch one. I gotta take a look.
Yeah, I think that's the name of it too. It's either Nick Freitas Doge Watch or just called Doge Watch. Like he did an interview with Rand Paul. He was sat down with President Trump at some point. He sat down with a bunch of cabinet members at one point. So here, before we end this, I had an epiphany the other day, and I'm trying to figure out how to write this. And I think I'm going to put it on paper. I wasn't going to, but I think I am now. Do you use the VA for anything?
No.
Is that because you have your own private health insurance through whatever company or through your wife's company that you don't have to use that?
Yeah. So that's most of it. Yeah, that's most of it.
Have you had a bad experience at the VA? Let's ask that.
Yeah. So I went to the VA when I first got out of the Army the first time. And it took so long to get seen that I was like, man, I can't do this. Like, this is a waste of my time. Like, I don't have to do it. And so I was like, because of that, I'm not gonna. Because the other thing I thought about was like, cool, I can save money and not have health insurance because I can be covered by the VA. But I can just spend a couple of bucks that I have health insurance, save myself all that time, and now I take myself out of that slot. Because the budget for the VA is the budget. And if, all things being equal, I'm like, let's save some other people some time. I'll step out of line. I'll go over here. I'll pay this guy. I'm saving myself time and I'm saving the VA, hopefully the other veterans some time, And that's kind of been my thing with it, is like, no. And it's, I'm glad it's there. I've definitely thought of it as a safety net for myself sometimes. But I'm not. Nah.
So my first interaction with the VA was when I was living in the St. Louis area. I thought I tore something in my shoulder. And I was like, well, I'm using the VA. I have TRICARE, but I hadn't really used TRICARE. And the doctor I had wasn't the greatest. I have a kick-ass doctor now. And so I went to the VA to see if I could get an MRI. And the lady's like, oh, you don't have a primary care provider. You need to get one of those. And then she goes to sign me up. And she's like, oh, it's going to take you like 27 weeks to get one of these. It's like 6 months. She goes, well, we'll circumvent it. We'll send you to the ER. The ER will send you to get an MRI. We'll get you an MRI. And then you'll just have to come back in, fill out a piece of paper and take it. And then we'll sign you up now so you can get a, what'd she call it? You can get a PMC. Primary care provider. So I'm like, all right, I get the MRI and I don't think about it. And this is like February of 2017. February of 2018, I get a call. The end of February, I get a call. A lady from the VA. She was, hey, we just got your appointment scheduled. It's going to be for like the first week of March. And I was like, well, who are you? She's like, I'm so-and-so calling from the VA. And I was like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
She's like, well, you just came in 2 weeks ago. I'm like, lady, you need to look at that date. So she looks at it and she goes, oh, it's been just over a year. And I was like, hey, listen, is there another veteran that does not have TRICARE, that cannot afford to get care somewhere other than the VA, that can use this appointment other than me? She goes, oh yeah, I can schedule like 3 people because initial appointments are an hour and most are 20. So I could do 3 appointments. Give it to that guy. I mean, I hope I don't piss a ton of people off by saying this, but let's say we take the VA and turn it into an insurance company. Work with me here. You get rid of all the VA clinics. You get rid of all the VA hospitals. Over, done. Close them all. Shut them down. Now you take all those veterans and you say, go find care on the economy. In my opinion, it does 2 things. It pumps more money into the economy. It allows you to pick your own primary care provider. And then when you go in and you're seen, if you're a 100% guy, anything you go get seen for is going to be covered. If you're a 70% guy, it's going to cover whatever, right? And those are the rates, just like it's been. Like if I go in and I'm 70% and I have a left shoulder issue, and that's the issue I have, I can do that again. They look at my left shoulder. But if I have a right shoulder issue now, but that's not covered under the VA, I'm going to have to pay that out of pocket. And I have to know that. Like, listen, if this isn't service connected, it's going to cost you. And then the VA can say, hey, if you're willing to pay X amount of copay, like we do for TRICARE for life, you can get fully insured through the VA. Now what you've done is you've closed all these hospitals and you've closed all of these clinics. You're putting more money into the economy. You're giving people faster service. I have my own primary care provider, TRICARE. I can get in within a matter of a week, if not sooner. So for instance, I tore my left pec 3 weeks ago, maybe 4 weeks ago. I couldn't get in to see my primary care provider, but I'd already had an ortho. I tore it on Wednesday. Monday, I had an ortho appointment. She was like, we need to get you an MRI now. So I went and had an MRI an hour after my appointment. And it was red by the end of the day. And I went and seen her 2 days later. And she was like, hey, it's a tear in the muscle belly. You didn't detach anything. We dodged a bullet here. Thank God. And so you already have a physical therapist. Let's go about your deal. Right. And so that's how quick it is for me to get care. If you try to, there's no way you can get care like that at the VA that quick. And so my thing is, the VA budget is, let's say it's, I don't know what it is, and I'm going to get chastised for this. And somebody in the comments going to Nick, you're all fucked up and don't know your numbers, but let's say it's $30 billion. What do all these hospitals and doctors and nurses and maintenance and care and facility runs, what does all that cost? And if you shut all of that down and you turn the VA, you keep the VA ratings deal the same, the administration piece stays the same. All you do is for care. Now you go on the economy. What does that look like? Could you make that work? And does it save money? A, And I don't really care about it because it's a veteran funded thing. But does it get the veteran better care at a faster rate?
Right. That I think that's a no-brainer. Yeah. Right. Like, I mean, it's gotta be and I would say even like, don't necessarily close them, right? Turn them into something else, make it whether a private hospital, some other kind of public hospital, turn it into something else where you don't kill, because that's a ton of infrastructure and capacity, right?
You could sell the campuses off.
Yeah. Do something else like that. But I would be, I can't think of a veteran I know that actually uses the VA that likes having to drive there, right? Because there's not that many VA locations either. So it's a centralized thing. Everybody's also paying, not just with the time to, wait to be seen, but drive time, travel time, all that other stuff, because they have to go there when it would be probably more convenient too. So I think decentralizing it like that could be really interesting. I don't know enough about it to have like, but yeah, I when you say that, I'm like, I can't think of anybody that I know that goes.
I know a couple guys.
I mean, I talked to SFA dudes. I think that most of those guys that do, maybe they like the familiarity. They like that people recognize what they did. They understand like veterans because they only see veterans. Maybe that's
maybe.
I don't know. But you were saying you talked to a couple guys.
My PMC, so I got a couple guys living in the Tampa area, and they absolutely love that Tampa VA. Now, if for anyone that doesn't know, Tampa has more fucking 4-star generals that live in Tampa than you can swing a stick at. But you can't swing a dead cat in Tampa without hitting at least 3-4-star generals. What's down there? CENTCOM, SOCCENT. Like, there's, I think SOC South is down there. McDill is full of GOs, man. Yeah. And so when those GOs retire, a lot of those dudes stick around and do companies outside of Tampa. So you have to, if those guys are going to use the VA, you have to have care that all those GOs are fucking accustomed to having them. They were on active duty, right? And so, but that's always been and then, I've always said when I used to go to Madigan, I would get so pissed because there'd be so many retirees using Madigan. Like, get the fuck out of Madigan, dude. Like, I understand TRICARE Prime, and I understand guys still want to go to the hospital on base because that's all they've ever known. But like, man, I'm telling you, getting appointments when I was in at Madigan could be a pain in the ass at times. And it was like, oh man, going to the fucking pharmacy was like the worst thing ever. It was like an hour or two wait. It could be up to a 2-hour wait at a pharmacy to get drugs. You're like, but you're competing with like 700 retirees and veterans, and you're like, God damn, man, like, bro, go see a doctor on the economy.
That part would kill me, man. And I still fail to understand the guys that want to be on the base or want to be there with that stuff. Cause to me, it feels like the DMV, and I'm just not, I don't want to do it. And all right, I gotta, so me and the president of Chapter 78 of the Special Forces Association down here, and actually, some of the other guys, the treasurer too, we didn't particularly like going to the base to have our meetings. There's a guard base down here. We're going to have our meetings. And the base kicked us out because we weren't a tenant unit, so we didn't have any priority. They kicked us out. And so we got like a cool conference room in a hotel. Immediately, dudes complained to us. And they're like, you got to get us back on the base. I'm like, they kicked us out. They wouldn't give us the space. We're not a tenant unit. Like, and they're like, yeah, but being on the base. And I was like, I don't know. I don't like it. This is so much nicer. The food is better. They're like, it's not that much better. I was like, all right, guys, like I'll have a conversation. I'll see if there's another space. I'll tell you right now, I don't want to do that.
People are uncomfortable with change.
I think you're right. If I can, man, one thing I got to say is if you know anybody, and I kind of already hit you up about your one buddy that wrote the book, but somebody that wrote a book or has a business or something that they can tie in with their story, or just has a great story to tell, Special Forces Association Chapter 78 would love to have them as a guest speaker. So we have our monthly meetings. We do that stuff. we're going to start doing more other stuff because we're trying to get more younger guys in. But we do that stuff. We'll fly them out. We'll take care of their travel, take care of everything. We just want to hang out with other SF dudes and hear about what they're doing now. So, and like, for instance, if you want to come hang out, you can see Orange County for yourself. I don't think I have enough weights for you to get a warm up, but we can work something out, man. Like, but it'd be great. Or just come hang out and, go to a meeting and we'll go hang out. Bring Jen, we'll go to the beach. Like,
yeah, for those of you that don't know, James is the vice president for chapter 78 of the SF Association, correct? Is that right?
Yeah.
Over the last 2 hours, man. It has been great, dude. Primal Risk, James Mclanahan. I don't know if you know this. For the last 12 years I've known you, dude, I've always called you Jimmy Mac. And that's how I've known you for like the last 12 years. So I said that to somebody last week. Who the fuck is Jimmy Mac? And I'm like, man, how the fuck do you not know this? And they're like, bro, I'm pretty sure you're the only fucking guy that calls him that. Like, if you ever said that to his face, and I'm like, fuck, I don't know if I've ever said that in front of him or not. So I figured I would be like, you know what, dude, for the last 12 years, I've known you as Jimmy Mac. That's what I always knew you as. You've always been one of my favorite guys when I was the ops sergeant of the B team. The whole time I was in Charlie Company, man, you have always been one of my favorite dudes.
Damn.
You have your head screwed on straight. You're fucking always doing the right thing, man. And I've loved watching you work through getting out, you and Mel being together. Your marriage is, that's something a lot of SF guys don't have, is a single marriage where you've been together and worked through all of your problems, man. And it's been awesome to watch your journey, man. And I want to continue to watch it. And as things move in for you and move up for you, man, I want to bring you back on the show and talk about that stuff again, man. But I am super impressed, for whatever that means coming from my dumb ass, like, on what you have done over the course of the last 10 years since I left group.
Dude, that's huge. I feel like all I've ever done is try to like show up on time and show up sober and work hard. I never, man, like, cause I still think of myself and I tell people this all the time, like, pretty average in our community. Like, we have some freaking great dudes.
Yep.
And so like, it's funny. Cause I'm like, you just don't necessarily know. Cause so many of us get out and they don't ever want to tell anybody ever. And they don't ever wear any swag when they go out. They don't say anything about it, but like, you'll just go see this like silent, hardworking performer. And they're just another guy from our community, like, yeah, it is super cool. Thank you for letting me come on, man. Thank you, Jenna. Thank you guys for like hanging out. We gotta keep hanging out, keep bullshitting.
Do you have shirts available on your website yet? I know the shirt you're wearing.
Yeah.
Okay. So like I said, his description will be in there, man. Go pick up some of his swag, dude. Jimmy Mac's a great dude, man. I appreciate you coming on the show. And Jenna, take it away.
The best advice anyone ever gave me was 2 words. You can't. And you know what my response was? 2 words. Watch me.